Welcome back to part 2 of our flip lecture on the main theories of motivation. When we ended part 1, we were talking about the incentive approach, and we were talking about the idea of the over-justification effect, which is something that students tend to struggle with because it kind of seems to move against what we learned about operant conditioning in our unit on learning. So over-justification effect basically states that sometimes when we give an extrinsic reward for something that we already feel intrinsically motivated to do, we actually can decrease our interest in the behavior. So what do I mean by that? Well, for instance, let's say we have a little boy who is intrinsically motivated to paint. He just loves to paint. And he paints pretty impressive pictures for his age. So mom and dad kind of pick up on that and they're like, wow, these are really amazing pictures. Maybe we could become famous as having, like the 4-year-old Picasso. And so they start selling this little boy's paintings on eBay. And now the painting doesn't become intrinsically motivated anymore. Now this little boy is no longer painting because he loves to paint and he loves to freely express himself and he gets that nice warm fuzzy feeling inside and a sense of self-satisfaction. Now this little boy is painting because it's paying the bills and his family depends on it. So maybe he might find that he doesn't much like it anymore. You might see this with child actors. Once acting becomes a job, once acting becomes extrinsically rewarded through a paycheck, children might no longer enjoy acting the way that they once did when it was all about intrinsic motivation. If you think back to when you were little and had to do that reading reward, this might have happened to you. I know it happened to me. I loved to read. I would read all day long. But when I had to fill out that annoying reading chart, when I was reading because I needed to fill in this chart because I then in turn would get a coupon for pizza, I didn't really enjoy reading as much. I kind of read less when it was all about filling out the chart and getting that pizza party. Something that was very intrinsically pleasing to me, very intrinsically rewarding, kind of became like work. It kind of became like an assignment. It kind of became all about the extrinsic reward. And so my motivation kind of decreased. I have a friend who's a very gifted baker. And people constantly say to her, oh my God, you should quit your job and you should open up a bakery. She makes the most amazing cakes. She makes the most amazingly decorated cake pops and chocolate dipped Oreos and candy lollipops. She does it because that's her relaxation. That's her enjoyment. That's her outlet to express her creativity. Nobody's paying her to do it. She just does it because she really, really enjoys the process. But if she were to quit her job and her livelihood depended upon her making these beautiful cakes and candies, she might feel the over-justification effect. It would become all about extrinsic reward at that point, about profiting off of it. And she probably would find it less enjoyable than she does right now because she's doing it for intrinsic reasons. Now, our last school of theories are the humanists. So the idea behind the humanistic approach is that humans are motivated by the desire to have basic needs met. So basically, according to our main humanistic theorist, Abraham Maslow, we have this pyramid of needs. So we start at the bottom of the pyramid. And when we fulfill that first basic need, we're then able to move up to the next need. When we meet that second need, we're able to climb the pyramid to the next level and fulfill that third need. So as we are climbing the pyramid and fulfilling our needs, our overall end goal is to reach what he calls self-actualization. So right here you have pictured Maslow's original hierarchy of needs. So at the very bottom are physiological needs. So for instance, the need for food, the need for water, the need to sleep. We first have to be motivated to fulfill that need. If we don't have our basic physiological needs met, we really can't think of anything else. We're really not going to be motivated to pursue, any kind of loftier goal. So once our basic physiological needs are adequately met, we then could move to the second step of the pyramid. We could look to try to fulfill our safety needs. Safety needs make us feel safe. They make us feel protected. Safety needs would include having a shelter to live in, having clothes on our back, having an alarm system maybe if we felt that we lived in a dangerous area, having our parent at home with us at night. That would make us feel safe. And once we've acquired those safety needs, then he says we could think about developing friendships. Then we could think about fulfilling our love and belongingness needs. If we don't feel safe, we can't feel loved. If we don't have our basic physiological needs met, we can't even think about trying to form relationships. So once we're able to climb to the third step, then we begin to worry about relationships and finding a peer group and making friendships and maybe falling in love with somebody. And after we feel that we are loved and belong to somebody, then we can move on to fulfilling our esteem needs. And esteem needs basically involve feeling good about ourselves, feeling competent, feeling industry, feeling that we're good at things, feeling recognized through achievements and rewards. And then finally, once we've cleared that fourth level of the pyramid, then we can work on becoming self-actualized. So if we take a look at Maslow's hierarchy again, it begins at the base level with our physiological needs, and then we slowly move higher and higher, adding more higher level needs. Okay, so we move from physiological needs, then to safety needs, and then finally we're able to address psychological needs. Your book is going to show you a more complex pyramid. As Maslow continued his work, he did add different levels. He added cognitive needs right after esteem needs, and he also added another layer that he called aesthetic needs. We are going to do a little bit of work with this, but honestly, for the purposes of the exam, I think we would be much more likely to see his original 5-level pyramid of physiological safety, belongingness and love, esteem, and self-actualization. So what does self-actualization mean? Well, it's not something that's easy to define. But someone who has reached self-actualization is able to accurately perceive reality. They have a well sense of who they are. They have developed their identity, and importantly, they've accepted their identity. And because they have accepted themselves, they can accept others. They have a good sense of humor. They're able to identify with other people. They could be spontaneous. They can be autonomous. In other words, even in the face of opposition, they could stay true to themselves. They value their privacy. They have really deep, intimate, and loving relationships with a core group of people. And they have a sense of discovery. And so one of the things we're going to do tomorrow is kind of discuss some examples of self-actualized people from history, from literature, and also people that we actually know in our lives. Now, 2 other last concepts that are associated with the humanistic approach are peak experiences. Achieving self-actualization is kind of a tall order. When you do your own personal profile, I don't really expect any of you to say that you have reached self-actualization. You guys are teenagers. You're still figuring out your identity. You're still on your path to life. So I wouldn't expect you to be self-actualized. I actually wouldn't want you to be self-actualized at 15 or 16 years of age. But what you might have experienced are what the humanists call peak experiences. We could have periods of time in our life, experiences in our life, when self-actualization is temporarily achieved, when kind of all of our efforts and goals kind of merge together for a moment when we feel that we really are fulfilling our destiny and living up to our full potential. And this is closely related to the concept of flow. Flow is when we feel this sense of absorption and full involvement. Our action and our awareness are kind of fully merged, and we kind of feel that we have this potential to succeed, and our performance is increased, and our learning is increased. Sometimes athletes refer to flow as being in the zone. The positive psychologists who developed the concept of flow described it as being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away. Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved, and you're using your skills to the utmost. So let's say you're on the free throw line. It's the state championship game. And basically, everyone else melts away. You're feeling no stress. You're totally absorbed, totally in the zone. Your mind and body are one. And you're able to achieve this amazing experience of shooting 2 free throws and winning the state championship. It doesn't have to be something as amazing as that, though. I have plenty of students who are artists, and they describe being in flow when they are creating something. And they describe the creation of a piece of artwork as a peak experience. Likewise, I have students involved in theater, and they talk about this feeling of deep flow when they step onto stage and into character. And they talk about certain performances being peak experiences for themselves. So you're going to explore all of this and be relating all of these concepts, all of these 6 different schools of motivational theory to yourself through your personal profile.